So this will be a little bit of a different video, as you can probably tell from the lack of a cheesy dramatic opening. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome back to T-Girl Telepathica, where today, Calli has decided she's going to make even more enemies. I may have already gone through my rankings of the legions, but that's most certainly not the whole story there. What about their gene fathers, after all? That's right, today we'll be going through and rating the scale of how much I enjoy each Primarch. Unlike the list of the founding chapters, this one is very set in stone. It so rarely changes, though it certainly is possible for it to do so. So without further ado... Now, if you've seen my chapter ranking video, you probably have an idea of who's at the bottom of the list. And you'd be wrong. Horus sucks. Okay, so that was a little bit dramatic, but it's not far off from my opinion. Here we have maybe the most significant human, meant to exemplify the entirety of the evil of the Imperium, and before he fell he was such a whiny bitch most of the time, and after he fell he was too insane to be interesting. On the list of champions of Chaos Undivided, he doesn't even peek up past Abaddon, much less Be'lakor or Archaon. I refuse to separate these two into their own categories because they're really just that boring. Alpharius and Omegon exemplify the bad parts of the Alpha Legion. No explanation and nothing done with it. They have a motivation, but that's so old and out there that not only was it never really that good, but it was probably never even true. I genuinely would have enjoyed it if we got one of the missing Primarchs over these two, and it likely would have made more sense. So with number 16, we already get out of the Primarchs that I don't like. Everything from here up, I have varying degrees of a positive view on. So the worst of the first of the best goes to Angron. I know, the World Eaters are one of those factions that hook people because of their vibe, and a lot of their vibe is in Angron, but that's genuinely my problem with him. Angron is all vibes. After his origin and what we see of him in the Horus Heresy, he's not a character, even in his own dedicated books. He's an almost sentient ballistic missile with several buzzsaws strapped to it. He is purely a monster and a threat more than he ever is a character, which is why he is put so low. Moving along from a lack of character to a decent amount of character, but simply a type of character I'm kinda meh on, we have Fulgrim. Fulgrim is a rather well-told story of a tragedy of a brother steadily corrupted to the path of chaos due to an artifact and some trickery of those under. Hey, wait a minute. Yeah, Fulgrim to me sort of parallels Horus in terms of backstory. But credit to him, it's a much better backstory than Horus himself has. He starts off with an actual flaw, he has a great relationship with one of his brothers, and that relationship plays directly and heavily into his fall. However, and this may be the best example of why this list is an opinion piece, first of all, I hate tragedies. I feel like tragedies are so overrated as stories and that there are better types of stories to be writing. And Fulgrim is perhaps the second most tragic case on this list, so naturally, I don't like him all that much. Moving up from snakes to ravens, we have the ever-heroic Batman, Corvus Corax. Yeah, this guy kinda criminally doesn't have much on him, a similar problem being shared elsewhere on this list. But until Primarchs like this come back, this is precisely what we're stuck with. Corvus Corax's story has the setup of such a great story, but this is a story that isn't told, and instead we get funny raven demon screaming at his holy book-loving brother, which is good, but not good enough. And to tell you how top-heavy this list is, if it was a ranking as a tier list, we've already gotten to my favorite Primarchs, which yes, is just over 2/3 of them. First of these, we get to the ever-petulant Peter Turbo, the guy who's just not good enough to build Dad's house. Perturabo is a fun character, absolutely, but he's fun in a very uninteresting way. He's funny to laugh at, but beyond that, he really isn't the best character. Being the best in his lineup of brothers is really not hard because if his brothers weren't stark raving mad, they were depressed or just didn't want to be there. So I'm hoping his return, whenever that may be, heralds a vast improvement of his character. Next, we get into the most full of himself fuck-up of a magic man who originally thought the entire Horus Heresy was specifically about him. Yes, I'm talking about Magnus the Failure. Magnus is also a case where his story is serious for the most part, but it's taken to an extreme where it just becomes funny. He means so well, but he screws up so much that it's hilarious. One of the funniest quotes to me, attributed to Magnus, who I heard from Adeptus Ridiculus themselves first, I'm not sure if that's where it's from, but I'm lazy to do research, is Magnus did nothing wrong. He was told to do nothing, and he did it wrong. And now for the last of the 4 Chaos Gods. We have my personal favorite Chaos God's unwilling representative, Mortarion. Mortarion has some of the problems Horus has, and has a similar, less extreme attitude problem as Perturabo. But I believe he's done better than either of these two, and his tragic story I think is a little bit better than Angron's because you actually get to have more of his thoughts afterwards. And he's actually allowed to let his own emotions shape his actions because he's not a sentient buzzsaw. Also, his look is maybe the coolest of any of the 4 Chaos God Primarchs. I don't care that they're not a weapon of war, scythes are cool. Rounding out the top of the first half of the list, we have everyone's perfect favorite son of the Blood Angels, who is a literal angel. Sanguinius to me fixes a lot of the problems that the Blood Angels themselves have, as the whole angelic savior gimmick I feel is very much lost on the chapter of today. And I genuinely feel like the entire faction would have been better without the Black Rage. The Red Thirst was more than enough of a flaw. Sanguinius is extremely cool, very badass, and is only kept from the top of the list because he jobbed out to literally the worst Primarch in existence. The guy who managed to be less cool than his modern iteration, who is one of his sons. Looking at you, Horus. This placing for this particular character is probably going to upset some people, but I don't care. I like him. Ferrus Manus has a lot of the same problems Corvus does, with an underdeveloped personality and just too little actually about him written down before he croaked. However, what we did get of him is, in my opinion, absolutely some of the best Horus Heresy era Primarch writing of any of the 19 Sons. He made me actually care about a tragedy. The idea that he had such grand plans for his sons, to redirect the culture that they have, and to bring them into a more genuinely better idea than they have now, and all of that being taken away by his closest brother, is truly cinema. I just wish he was able to actually finish what he wanted to do with his sons, because the Iron Hands as they are right now are just yeesh. I once heard this about this next entrant. I forget from where. If you genuinely hate Lorgar, then you haven't read anything about him. And that's absolutely right. Lorgar is maybe the most misrepresented character in the lore, and is maybe the most interesting as well. But he's overlooked because of his relation to a certain character. At least I think so. His entire ideal, and everything he wanted to do, entirely focuses on the fact that he was religious. He genuinely wanted to believe in the spiritual. And in exact opposite standing to what many people in our world experience, his father didn't approve of his belief and tried to force said belief out of him. In response, he decided he would search for the gods who wanted to be worshipped. And oh, did he find them. It's unfortunate that he lives in the 40k universe and not ours, otherwise he might have been saved from his fate. Make memes about them until they cry, then make memes about them crying. Sun Tzu, an unexpected journey through the mountains of whatever. The point is, Jagatai Khan is extremely funny and an incredible Primarch. So different from his brothers given he grew up and accepted a feudal world and took those ancient ideals to heart. He has always stood out to me in that he feels like the best philosopher of any of the Primarchs. He encourages his sons to go with their own flow, and since they can't choose their purpose, to learn to love their purpose instead. Though there are Primarchs with better statecraft skills, and Primarchs with a higher view on humanity, Jagatai has always felt like he refused the idea that he was just a weapon, and decided to be his own human first. And that's something that can inspire us all. Moving from the greatest philosopher to truly the most human of all the Primarchs, here we have Vulcan, the naturally tallest Primarch and the Forge Master of the Sons of the Emperor. Vulcan ushers us into the first levels of the top of this list because even though he truly is one of my favorite, I can't really justify putting him any higher than the others up here, either because they're so well developed or that they're extremely funny. Vulcan always being the kindest of the Primarchs, to the point that he, as a human, felt bad for the Eldar, makes him a very unusual character in the ranks of the entirety of humanity, and a unique part of Warhammer as a whole indeed. These next two entries are about to be absolutely shocking for anybody who watched my Space Marine ranking video, because next up on number 5 we have Rogal Dorn. I know, the Primarch of that list's number 1 getting the number 5 seems absolutely wild, and truthfully I didn't expect it myself. But you see, Rogal suffers from the fact that he could really use some more development, like a couple of the other entries further up the list benefited from. And at the end of the day, his Legion's vibe is just Space Marine. Since this list is so set in stone, it kind of gives you an idea of where the Legions will end up being, given my opinions on the Primarchs. However, there is one exception to this rule, and that is... So, I absolutely despise the Night Lords. I think they're a bunch of cowards who don't do the Shock Trooper gimmick well enough. Do you know who else shares this opinion with me? You're goddamn right, it's Conrad Curze. Conrad takes everything that the Night Lords are and does it well. He's batshit insane, and anyone who likes him likely enjoys him for the same reason people enjoy the Joker. He's a man who wants to see the world burn because it's what his chosen premonitions have told him. He believes they're all completely doomed, and he has actively worked to make sure that's correct. And at the end of his life, he let himself get overtaken by a person he absolutely could have killed, because as Izander of Izander and Coda fame said, he would rather be dead than wrong. Genuinely, I can't wait to see 1, if he returns, and 2, when he returns. What he will be like, because oh man, he's gonna be so mad if that theory of the crown is right. So this list is kinda cheating. There are 2 particular loyalists who have gotten the benefit of the recently absolutely masterful storytelling that GW has been putting out. In order for this list to be fair though, I would have likely had to wait another 10 or 15 years of my life in order to see the return of the rest of the Primarchs. At least the ones that can return. So without further ado, the top 3 is introduced by the demigod of pencil pushing himself, the Lord Commander of the Imperium, Roboute Guilliman. Guilliman in the Horus Heresy would have been in the lower third of this list. But with his recent return, he has been able to clarify so much of what he got wrong in his younger years, as well as see for himself the trouble that has caused, as well as the trouble that not following his father's vision has caused. And oh boy, it is weighing on him. You ever make a mistake? You ever realize you were in the wrong, and that you really should have handled something better than you did? So far, that's been the story of the Silver Second Place, the Knight Exterminator of the Emperor, the Son of the Forest, Lion L. Johnson. The Lion has had honestly a better arc over the course of the last edition than Guilliman had, encouraging his sons to face their past and make up with those uncorrupted but rogue brothers, and it makes me so extremely hopeful for the future returns. Speaking of which, now for the next Primarch who I think will be returning. The White Wolf of Ferrus. The one who bested the Emperor in all but combat. The ever-grinning predator who, according to him, silenced 2 of his rogue brothers. We have the All-Father, Leman Russ. Russ has always been my absolute favorite Primarch. From the very moment that I first heard of him, with his Viking vibe and unapologetically Norse look to every one of his sons, I don't think any Space Marine Legion of any kind can say they can outdo them in terms of looks. Burn the Codex, break the chains, all for the Emperor and the All-Father's name. Sorry not sorry, Thousand Sons fans. Number 1 is Leman Russ. And with that, that'll be the end of today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you so much for being patient with me as I moved over the past month. Look forward to another video next week, and I'll see you all next time.